Deep within the unforgiving embrace of the North Sea, humanity forged a titan, a colossal, sprawling city of steel, fire, and ambition. It was designed to extract some of Earth's most volatile resources. A monument to engineering might, it defied the crushing waves and the extreme isolation in one of Earth's most terrifying locations. But on a calm evening in July of 1988, this marvel of modern industry would reveal a harrowing truth. Even our most formidable creations are highly susceptible to human error. This is the true story of the Piper Alpha, where the pursuit of energy claimed the lives of 167 men. This was the Piper Alpha. It stood as a self-contained world housing hundreds of men. Its design was a sprawling network of interconnected modules. This maximized efficiency, but at a concentrated risk. You see, out here, the days bled into weeks. The ever-present hum of heavy equipment dominated their very existence. Each shift was a precisely choreographed fight between man and the ever-aging machine. A cold and isolated existence. Yet, to the crew, this was just another routine shift, completely unaware of the structural vulnerabilities and the procedural gaps directly in plain sight. Piper Alpha, commissioned in 1976, had a fundamental flaw given its highly volatile environment. Its condensate production systems were located within a single interconnected unit of modules. This linked system meant that a fire in one processing area, by design, could rapidly spread to the others. This was due to the sharing of risers and inadequate fire barriers. Imagine you have multiple units in close proximity to one another, all extracting oil and gas, sharing the same two pipes. These larger pipes then branch off to those units, creating the link. This configuration was optimized for efficiency, but highly vulnerable to cascading failures. For years, Occidental Petroleum, the owners, prioritized production, often at the direct expense of fundamental safety. Internal audits and industry reports consistently highlighted a pervasive culture where production targets frequently overshadowed vital maintenance tasks. In addition to this, firewalls within the facility, designed to compartmentalize fires and explosions within these separate modules, were either absent or completely inadequate. For example, there were no active barriers between the gas compression and oil separation units. This was a major mistake. Outdated equipment showing clear signs of corrosion and stress went entirely unreplaced. Instead, as was far too common in the industry, Band-Aid solutions became a part of their routine, turning what should have been critical fixes into literal ticking time bombs across the entire platform. But more importantly, in industries like the one we're talking about, oil and gas, the permit to work system was completely undermined. Permit to work, or PTW, is designed to ensure that every maintenance or non-routine task is explicitly authorized, meaning that it is signed off on by the proper chain of command and that it is meticulously planned and documented. It's a formal communication and control tool detailing the work to be done, assessing the hazards, and specifying the necessary precautions. Like isolating equipment from energy sources, lockout, tagout, and requiring signatures from all relevant personnel. For instance, it ensures that welding operations aren't being conducted while flammable gas is being released in an area nearby. The system also demands tagging, physically labeling valves or switches that clearly indicate their status. At Piper Alpha, permits were often improperly issued and not fully understood, or simply misplaced due to the relentless push for continuous operation. This sort of negligence had begun to permeate at every level, creating the dangerous illusion of order. The grave danger of all of this oversight lay in the fact that it removed the last line of defense against catastrophic human error. Without the PTW system working correctly, workers were operating in an environment where essential safety checks were absent, and critical information about ongoing operations and potential hazards was not effectively communicated. Basically, while the men on the rig understood the inherent dangers of their work, they also felt implicit pressure to keep production flowing. Piper Alpha was not a matter of if a disaster was going to happen, but it was an accelerating and terrifying countdown to when. The catastrophic chain of events that led to the Piper Alpha disaster began not with an explosion, but with a critical procedural failure in the early morning hours of July 6, 1988. Condensate Pump A, one of two vital pumps that re-injected highly flammable gas back into the oil well, was taken offline for routine maintenance. In addition to this, its pressure safety valve had been removed. At the end of the shift, it was replaced with a blind flange, but the bolts had only been hand-tightened. Keep in mind this is on the discharge side of the pump. Meanwhile, on the suction side, the valve had never been closed, and it was never tagged out. Standard safety protocol, specifically the permit to work system, explicitly required that this hazardous status be meticulously documented and communicated. A physical permit detailing the work in the pump's isolated state should have been displayed in the control room, and the corresponding valve should have been clearly tagged to indicate its status. This is the oversight that laid the groundwork for the impending tragedy, revealing a fatal breakdown in the very system designed to prevent such a catastrophe. For starters, the permit for Pump A wasn't properly signed off. It was never moved to the control room's active safe rack. Instead, it was mistakenly placed on the pending rack, an error that would doom the lives of 167 men. Worse still, the daytime crew finishing their shift left a critical detail tragically uncommunicated. They failed to properly convey that Pump A wasn't just offline, that it was actively isolated and left wide open. Later that same night, the second active pump, Condensate Pump B, unexpectedly tripped and failed. Production being at the forefront of their objective, the night shift supervisor was completely unaware of Pump A's isolated state. He couldn't find its permit in the active rack. A fateful decision was made. He issued a new permit to restart Pump A, believing it to be viable, isolated, and on standby. No one had gone down to physically check the valve on that pump to confirm that it was closed. This was a tiny thread in a vast tapestry of the rig's operations. Everything, and I mean everything, was about to unravel. At precisely 10 p.m. on July 6th of 1988, control room operator Jeff Bollins, relying on the incompleted paperwork, remotely initiated the restart sequence for Condensate Pump A. He believed that he was activating a safe and isolated standby unit. Instead, he was unleashing chaos. Condensate Pump A, with its pressure safety valve removed, immediately surged to life. An immense and violent discharge of highly flammable gas and liquid condensate blasted from the loosened flange. Approximately 5 seconds after the pump was activated, the North Sea's night wasn't just illuminated, it was ripped apart by a blinding and deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the platform itself. A colossal fireball erupted, consuming the entire Module C area. The sheer force of that initial explosion rendered the control room a full 25 meters away completely useless. Monitors had been blown apart, and console boxes had essentially turned into clumps of molten slag. With that single searing blast, the rig's central nervous system was severed in an instant. All communication, all automated shutdown sequences, every last vestige of centralized control had been taken offline. Any chance of a mayday call and all hopes of a coordinated emergency response from within the platform itself was gone. Not to mention the instantaneous and brutal loss of life. Only a few crew members from within the control room were able to escape. Bollins, being one of them, was forced to abandon post. Chaos had effectively taken over. Vital emergency systems tied to the control room began failing one by one. Valves that were intended to shut themselves off in order to isolate fire from backtracking into the pipes or spreading to other critical areas never did their job. Designated pumps designed to disperse massive volumes of water in order to douse the flames were either destroyed or, in some cases, shut off manually by crew members in the ensuing panic who didn't know what they were designed for. By the time they had realized what had been done, it was far too late. Now, as unfortunate as this sounds, that initial blast was so great and so devastating that it was seen by other platforms several miles away. Therefore, those platforms were able to send out emergency calls on their behalf. In addition to this, they were also able to start the process of sending emergency rescue personnel. But for those still trapped on the Piper Alpha, they had no idea. More so, This was only the beginning of their harrowing struggle for survival. It had essentially become an unforgiving labyrinth of molten steel, superheated flame, and plumes of toxic smoke. The inferno, born from that single mistake, then began its rapid and monstrous climb. Its next target? The adjacent Module B. This module housed the main oil separation equipment, as well as the vertical risers carrying vast quantities of gas and crude oil. The heat was so extreme and so immediate that it began to warp the structural steel, rupture nearby pipelines, and melt critical pieces of equipment at a terrifying rate of speed. Piper Alpha, once a symbol of human achievement, instantly became a self-devouring machine. The vertical risers, housing those volatile gases, were positioned dangerously close to the initial blaze. As the heat intensified, these risers buckled and began to rupture. Each subsequent rupture ignited a new, monstrous explosion, transforming the platform into a relentless chain reaction of constant detonations. Escape routes have been severed almost immediately. Primary stairwells became chimneys of superheated smoke and fire, reaching temperatures that would instantly vaporize human flesh. Designated lifeboat stations located far too close to the main fire were either immediately inaccessible due to the immense heat or physically destroyed by the blasts. The one and only designated fireproof refuge, the subsea control module, quickly failed under intense external heat. Its integrity had been compromised. The design flaws, the missing firewalls, and the catastrophic failure of the automated shutdown systems meant the platform was now fighting against itself, trapping its crew within its own burning skeleton. From over 100 feet above the North Sea, the only alternative was a terrifying plunge into the freezing darkness below. Many had made that horrifying leap, battling the initial crushing impact and the immediate shock of the frigid cold. Some were tragically crushed by falling debris, while others, tragically, plummeted directly onto the decks below. Some simply vanished into the abyss, their desperate cries for help swallowed by the ever-growing inferno. They would never be found. Back on deck, those still trapped huddled together in isolated pockets, quickly succumbing to the overwhelming heat and the rapid onset of smoke inhalation, their final moments spent in a desperate struggle against the exits. The platform was now slowly becoming their collective tomb. Vessels and standby ships bravely approached the inferno, battling falling debris, the intense heat, and the constant threat of new explosions. Throughout the course of the night, they plucked survivors from the burning water, witnessing scenes of unimaginable horror. All the while, explosions continued to rip the structure apart everywhere around them. The struggle for survival was a desperate, minute-by-minute battle against an unyielding force. As dawn broke over the horizon on July 7th, the true scale of the horror became sickeningly apparent. Where a colossal, thriving platform had once stood, only a twisted, charred skeleton remained, reaching defiantly from the surface of the oil-slicked sea. Plumes of black smoke filled with chemicals stretched for miles across the horizon, visible even from the distant Scottish coastline, a grim monument to the devastation that occurred below. Firefighters and rescue teams, having battled the inferno throughout the night, exhausted with incredible bravery, began the agonizing and methodical task of searching through the wreckage and the contaminated waters. Bodies were discovered amidst the twisted steel of the collapsed modules. Many were found to be disfigured beyond recognition due to the intense heat. Rescue divers navigated a submerged graveyard of collapsed structural steel and debris. With every body they recovered, spoke of a desperate struggle to survive. This tragedy sparked an immediate, unprecedented, and exhaustive public inquiry. Led by Lord Cullen, it became one of the most comprehensive investigations into British industrial accident history. Over 150 witnesses testified, including senior executives, maintenance technicians, and lastly, the survivors. The Cullen Inquiry meticulously documented a pervasive culture of complacency within Occidental Petroleum, the platform operator. It revealed widespread inadequate maintenance practices, a critical lack of safety procedures, and a catastrophic breakdown of communication. Occidental Petroleum, the company at fault, were ultimately found guilty of a litany of safety violations and an appalling culture of neglect. The central question wasn't if the fire could have been prevented. It demonstrably could have been, but why the clear warnings have been so tragically ignored for so long, and why profit have been prioritized over the lives of 167 people. Despite these findings, no criminal charges were ever brought against Occidental Petroleum or any of its executives, a decision which to this day continues to spark outrage and debate among the victims' families. The Piper Alpha disaster underscored a grim reality, proving that criminal negligence in such complex corporate structures often remained an elusive form of justice. For the 61 men who survived, their escape was only the beginning of a decades-long battle. Many, like one survivor, fought PTSD and alcoholism for over 2 decades. He would carry the invisible wounds of that night for the rest of his life. Their lives were irrevocably shattered by a profound psychological trauma and a haunting sense of loss that never truly healed. The silent depths of the North Sea hold the eternal testament to the 167 lives that were tragically lost on that night. The story of the Piper Alpha stands as a stark reminder of the ultimate, unforgivable cost of a profit-driven lie.